The ships came down from the sky like black rain. Thousands of them, each one bigger than a city block. Blocking out the stars over every major city on Earth, people ran screaming through the streets. Cars crashed into each other. Buildings shook as the massive vessels lowered themselves through the clouds. Queen. Seraphel watched it all from her throne room in the command ship floating above New York City. She was ancient beyond human understanding, nearly 10,000 years old. And she had seen this scene play out on 11 different worlds. The panic. The chaos. The beautiful, delicious fear rising up from the population below like steam from a hot spring. Her species. The Velithrin did not eat food like other creatures. They fed on emotions. And fear was the richest meal of all. One planet's terror could sustain the Dominion for decades. Earth would be no different. Seraphel closed her crimson eyes and extended her senses downward. This was her gift, the power that made her queen, while ordinary Velithrin could sense hearts within 1,000 meters. She could reach across entire cities. She pushed her awareness through the atmosphere, through concrete and steel, into the beating hearts of 8 million humans. The fear hit her like a wave, so pure, so strong. She smiled, revealing teeth that were just slightly too sharp to be human. This harvest would be magnificent. But then something strange happened. Among the millions of terrified hearts, she sensed one that was different. One heart beating, steady and calm, like a stone in a rushing river. Not frozen with shock, not numb with despair. Genuinely, impossibly peaceful. Seraphel's eyes snapped open. She leaned forward on her throne, pressing her senses harder against that single heart. In 10,000 years of harvest across 11 star systems, she had never encountered anything like this. Every creature feared death. Every species broke when her ships appeared. It was the universal constant that made her people's survival possible. Yet this one human heart refused to cooperate. "Hi, Commander," she called out, her voice echoing through the throne room, VEK, then dash soul. Her most loyal servant for 2,000 years stepped forward and knelt. He was tall even for a Velithrin, with pale blue skin and eyes like polished obsidian. "My queen, there is a human in the city below. Sector 7 near the river. His heart is ... wrong. I want him brought to me, alive and unharmed." Vectinsel's face showed nothing, but Seraphel could sense the confusion in his heart. "May I ask why, my queen?" "The harvest is ready to begin. Surely one human is not worth delaying." "Find him," Seraphel interrupted. Now, the commander bowed and departed. Seraphel turned back to the viewing screen, watching the chaos below. But her mind remained fixed on that impossible heart. What kind of creature did not fear death? What kind of being could stand calm while the sky fell? She had to know. 3 hours later, the hunters found him. Marcus Cole was 43 years old, and he had spent the last 20 years working as a hospice nurse. When the ships appeared, he was in the middle of his night shift at St. Catherine's Hospice Center, a small building near the East River that housed 32 patients in their final days of life, the moment the sky turned dark with alien vessels. Chaos erupted. Nurses fled. Doctors ran for their cars. Security guards abandoned their posts. Within minutes, Marcus was the only staff member left in the building. He could have run too. The thought crossed his mind briefly, but then Mrs. Patterson in room 12 started screaming. And Mr. Okonkwo in room 8 began crying for his wife, who had died 6 years ago. And suddenly, Marcus realized that running was not something he was going to do. These people were dying. They had days left, some of them only hours. They were alone and terrified, and if the world was ending, then Marcus Cole was going to make sure they didn't face the end by themselves. So he moved from room to room, holding hands and speaking softly. He told Mrs. Patterson that everything would be okay, even though he had no idea if that was true. He sat with Mr. Okonkwo and let the old man talk about his wife, about their wedding day 50 years ago, about the way she used to sing while cooking breakfast. He checked vital signs and adjusted pillows and refilled water cups, doing the only thing he had ever known how to do, being present for people in their darkest moments. Marcus was sitting with a young woman named Sarah. holding her hand while she slept, when the door to her room exploded inward. 3 creatures stood in the doorway, tall and pale, with eyes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. They wore armor that looked like it was grown rather than built, and they carried weapons that hummed with energy. Sarah woke up screaming. Marcus squeezed her hand. "It's okay," he said quietly. "I'm here." "You're not alone," the human male, one of the creatures said. "The Queen commands his presence." Marcus looked at them for a long moment. He was afraid, of course. His hands trembled slightly, and his stomach felt hollow. But beneath the fear, something else held firm. These creatures could kill him. They probably would. But right now, Sarah needed him to be calm, so calm was what he would be. "Just let me say goodbye to my patients," he said. The creatures exchanged glances. They had expected screaming, running, begging. Not this. "You have 5 minutes," the leader said finally. Marcus nodded. He leaned down to Sarah and spoke softly. "I have to go now, but you're going to be okay. Close your eyes and think about that beach you told me about, the one in Hawaii where you learned to swim. Can you do that for me?" Sarah nodded, tears running down her face. Marcus smiled at her, then stood and walked toward the creatures. "I'm ready," he said, as they led him out of the building and into a waiting shuttle. Marcus Cole's heart beat steady and sure. He thought about Mrs. Patterson and Mr. Okonkwo and all the others he was leaving behind. He thought about his mother who had died in a hospice like this one 15 years ago, and about the nurse who had held her hand at the end. He was not brave. He was not special. He was just a man who had learned, through years of sitting with the dying, that some things mattered more than survival. Kindness mattered. Presence mattered. Love, in all its small and quiet forms, mattered. If this was the end, then Marcus Cole would face it the same way. He'd faced everything else in his life, with his heart open and his fear set aside. The shuttle rose into the sky, carrying him toward the massive command ship and the ancient queen who waited there. She had sensed his heart among millions. She had chosen him for reasons he could not imagine, but Marcus was about to teach her something that 10,000 years of conquest had never revealed. He was about to show her what human beings were truly made of, and the galaxy would never be the same. The throne room of the Velithran command ship was designed to break, and before a single word was spoken. The walls pulsed like living tissue, dark red and glistening, expanding and contracting in a slow rhythm that felt like being swallowed by something massive and hungry. The air smelled of copper and something older, something that made the human brain scream warnings about predators and death. Marcus Cole stood in the center of this nightmare, his hands bound behind his back, surrounded by guards who towered over him like pale statues. At the far end of the room, elevated on a throne of black crystal, sat Queen Say Rath-Vil. She was beautiful in the way that hurricanes are beautiful. 8 feet tall, with skin like fresh snow and hair that moved on its own, flowing around her shoulders like black smoke. Her eyes were the color of dying stars, red and orange and somehow hollow at the same time. When she looked at Marcus, he felt her gaze move through him like cold water. "Leave us," Serathel commanded. The guards hesitated. Vectensol stepped forward. "My queen, this creature may be dangerous." "The reports say his heart is," I said. "Leave us." The words were quiet, but they carried the weight of 10,000 years of absolute power. The guards retreated immediately, the doors sliding shut behind them. Marcus and the queen were alone. Serathel descended from her throne, moving with a grace that seemed to ignore gravity. She circled Marcus slowly, studying him like a scientist examining a strange new specimen. All the while she pressed her consciousness against his heart, searching for the fear she knew must be hiding. Somewhere inside, she found concern, worry, a deep sadness that seemed to have nothing to do with his current situation, but not fear, not the sharp, bright terror she needed. "You should be afraid," she said finally, stopping in front of him. "Every creature fears the harvest. Every species we have ever encountered has broken when they saw our fleet. Why are you different?" Marcus looked up at her. She expected defiance or rage or desperate courage. Instead, she saw something that confused her completely. Compassion. "You're starving," he said quietly. Seraphel went very still. What did you say? I've seen that look before. In patients who refuse to eat? In people who've forgotten why they should keep going. Marcus tilted his head slightly, studying her face the same way she had been studying his. You can sense hearts. That means you've felt everything, haven't you? Every species, every world you've harvested. All that fear, all that suffering. How do you carry it all? For one terrible moment, Seraphel felt something she had not experienced in 3,000 years. Her hand trembled. Her breath caught in her chest. This human, this insignificant creature from an insignificant world, had looked past her power and her throne and her 10,000 years of conquest. He had seen her. You dare, she began, but the words died in her throat. She was the queen of the Velithran Dominion. She had destroyed civilizations, broken empires, fed on the terror of billions, and this human was worried about her. I'm not trying to be disrespectful, Marcus said. I just notice things. It's part of my job. Was part of my job, I guess, he smiled sadly. I sit with dying people. I've been doing it for 20 years. After a while, you learn to see past the surface. You learn to recognize when someone is suffering, even when they're trying to hide it. Seraphel stared at him. I am not suffering. I am the most powerful being you will ever encounter. Those two things aren't opposites, Marcus replied gently. I've met a lot of powerful people in my work. CEOs, generals, politicians. They all ended up in my hospice eventually, and when they did, all that power meant nothing. They were just scared people who needed someone to hold their hand. I am not scared. No, you're not. You're tired. There's a difference. Marcus shifted his weight, wincing slightly as the binds on his wrists cut into his skin. You've been doing this for a very long time, haven't you? Conquering worlds, feeding on fear, and it's never enough. It's never satisfying. You keep chasing that feeling of fullness, but it never comes. Seraphel wanted to strike him. She wanted to drain every drop of emotion from his calm, impossible heart and prove that he was just like all the others. But instead, she found herself asking a question.
How do you know this?
Because fear is like junk food, Marcus said. It fills you up fast, but it doesn't nourish you. It doesn't satisfy the real hunger. The patients I've worked with who were most at peace at the end weren't the ones who had lived lives free of fear. They were the ones who had loved deeply and been loved in return. They were the ones who had connected with other people, really connected, not just used them or fed on them. The queen was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, she waved her hand, and the binds around Marcus's wrists dissolved. Sit, she said, gesturing to a chair that seemed to grow out of the floor. Tell me more about these patients of yours. Marcus sat down, rubbing his wrists. Are you going to kill me? I have not decided yet. But I find your words ... interesting. No one has spoken to me this way in many centuries. Perhaps longer. That's probably because you terrify everyone. Yes. Seraphel settled into a chair across from him. That is the point. Is it working? The terror, I mean. Is it making you happy? The question hung in the air between them. Seraphel could feel something shifting inside her. Something that had been frozen for thousands of years, beginning to crack like ice in spring. No, she admitted quietly. It is not. They talked for 6 hours. The queen asked questions about death and dying, about humans and their strange willingness to sit with suffering rather than run from it. Marcus told her about his mother, who had died slowly of cancer when he was in his 20s. He told her about becoming a hospice nurse because he never wanted anyone to die alone the way she almost had. He told her about the patients he had lost and the ones it helped, and the strange peace that came from being present in someone's darkest moment. Seraphel listened, really listened, in a way she had not listened to anyone in millennia. And as the hours passed, she began to feel something stirring in her own chest, a warmth she did not recognize, a lightness she had never experienced. When dawn came on the planet below, she had not fed. The harvest had not begun. Her commanders were growing restless. She could sense their confusion and concern, even from here. But for the first time in 10,000 years, Seraphel did not feel hungry. She felt something else entirely. Something she did not yet have a name for, but that she knew, with a certainty that went deeper than thought, would change everything. "You're a strange creature." "Marcus Cole," she said finally. "You're not the first person to tell me that," he replied with a small smile. "I do not understand you. I do not understand how your heart can be so calm in the face of death." Marcus shrugged. "Death isn't the enemy. Loneliness is, fear is. Disconnection is, as long as I can help someone feel less alone, even for a moment, then I'm doing something worthwhile. Even if that someone is an ancient alien queen who is planning to feed on my planet." Seraphel laughed. The sound surprised her so much that she stopped immediately, touching her throat as if checking for damage. She had not laughed in over 1,000 years. "You are dangerous," she said quietly. "Not. No," Marcus replied. "I'm just human. This is what we do." And in that moment, the queen of the Velithran Dominion began to wonder if everything she had believed for 10,000 years might be wrong. Word spread through the Velithran fleet like fire through dry grass. The queen had taken a human, not as prey, not as a slave, but as something else entirely. She spent hours alone with him each day, talking, listening, asking questions that made no sense to anyone who overheard them. Questions about love and loss, and what it meant to care for strangers. The harvest had been delayed for 3 days now. 3 days without feeding, with the richest meal in centuries waiting just below them on the planet's surface. The younger Velithran were growing weak, their pale skin turning gray with hunger. The older ones watched the queen's chambers with worried eyes and spoke in whispers. When they thought no one was listening, High Commander Vectenzal had served the throne for 2,000 years. He had watched queens rise and fall, had led the fleet through conquests that other species still told nightmares about. He had never questioned his queen before. But as he watched Saruthvel emerge from another long session with the human, her eyes distant and her heart radiating emotions he did not recognize, he knew something had gone terribly wrong. She was infected. The human had done something to her, used some kind of emotional manipulation that their species had never encountered before. The queen was no longer fit to rule. Vectenzal gathered his most loyal soldiers in a storage bay on the far side of the ship. 12 commanders, each one ancient and powerful, each one hungry and growing desperate. "The queen has lost her mind," Vectenzal said quietly. "This human has corrupted her somehow. If we do not act soon, we will all starve, and the Dominion will fall. What do you propose?" asked Commander Yeliska, a female with scars across her face from some long-ago battle. "We remove the queen from power. Temporarily, of course. Just long enough to complete the harvest and eliminate the human. Once she is free of his influence, she will thank us." The commanders exchanged glances. What Vectenzal was proposing was treason. In 10,000 years, no one had ever challenged a sitting queen. But hunger made beings do desperate things, and they were all very, very hungry. "When?" asked Yeliska. "Tonight? At the third moonrise, I have disabled the security systems outside her chambers. We will be quick and merciful." Meanwhile, in the queen's private chambers, Marcus was teaching Seraphel how to play chess. It had started as a way to pass time between their conversations. Marcus had found a chess set in a storage room that the Velithran had taken from some previous conquest, and he had suggested they play. Seraphel had never encountered the game before, but she was a quick learner. What fascinated her was not the strategy, but the way Marcus approached the game. He sacrificed pieces without hesitation. He made moves that seemed to weaken his position, but created opportunities for later. And when he lost, which he did, often against her ancient intellect, he smiled and set up the board again without frustration. "You do not care about winning," she observed, moving her queen to threaten his king. "I care about playing well," Marcus replied, studying the board. "Winning is just what happens sometimes when you play well. It's not the point. What is the point? The game itself? The challenge. The connection between two minds working against each other and with each other at the same time?" He moved his knight, blocking her attack. "In my job, I learned that you can't control outcomes. People die whether you want them to or not. All you can control is how you show up. Are you present? Are you kind? Are you doing your best? That's what matters. Rothvel was about to respond when she felt it. A disturbance in the hearts around her. 12 of her commanders, moving through the ship toward her chambers. Their emotions were tightly controlled, but she could sense the determination underneath. The righteous certainty of beings who believed they were doing the necessary thing. "We are about to have visitors," she said calmly. Marcus looked up from the board. "What kind of visitors?" "The kind who believe I have been corrupted by your influence. They are coming to remove me from power." Marcus stood immediately. "Then we need to leave." "Is there another way out of here?" "Yes, but I am not going to run from my own soldiers." Serathvel rose from her chair, and Marcus saw something shift in her posture. The ancient predator was waking up. "I am the queen of the Velithran Dominion. I do not hide from challenges. They'll kill you. They'll kill both of us, perhaps." She looked at him with those impossible eyes. "Are you afraid, Marcus Cole?" Marcus thought about the question seriously. He was afraid, yes. His heart rate was elevated, his hands were shaking slightly, and every instinct in his body was screaming at him to run. But beneath the fear, something else remained steady. "Yes," he said honestly, "but I'm not leaving." "Why not?" "You owe me nothing. You owe my species nothing. We came here to harvest your world." Marcus moved to stand between her and the door. "Because that's not who I am. I don't abandon people when things get hard. Even people who were planning to destroy my planet." Serathvel stared at him. In 10,000 years, no one had ever stood between her and danger. She was the protector, the predator, the one who shielded her people from threats. The idea that this small, fragile human would try to protect her was absurd. And yet here he stood, his calm heart beating steadily, his fear acknowledged but not controlling him. The doors exploded inward. Vectensel and his 12 commanders flooded into the room, weapons raised. They spread out in a half circle, cutting off any escape. The High Commander's eyes moved from the Queen to the human standing in front of her. His expression shifted from determination to confusion. "Step aside, creature," Vectensel commanded. "This does not concern you." "Actually, I think it does," Marcus replied. "You're here to hurt someone. That makes it my business. You cannot stop us. You are one human against 13 Velithran warriors. You have no weapons, no powers, nothing. I know." Marcus did not move. "But I'm not going anywhere." Vectensel raised his weapon. "Then you will die first." "Wait." Serathvel's voice cut through the tension like a blade. She stepped forward, placing her hand on Marcus's shoulder. "You came here because you believe I have been corrupted. You believe this human has somehow manipulated my emotions. Is that correct?" "Yes, my queen." Vectensel kept his weapon raised. "You have delayed the harvest. You have spent days with this creature. You have changed in ways that threaten the survival of our people." "You're right. I have changed." Serathvel moved past Marcus, walking toward her commanders. "But I have not been corrupted. I have been awakened." She reached out with her gift, not as a weapon this time, but as a mirror. She found what she had been sensing in Marcus for days. It's that steady warmth, that impossible peace, that love which asked for nothing in return. And she projected it outward, letting every Velithran in the room feel what one human heart contained. The effect was immediate. Vectensel gasped and stumbled backward, his weapon falling from suddenly weak hands. Yeliska dropped to her knees, tears streaming down her scarred face. The other commanders staggered, overwhelmed by an emotion none of them had ever experienced before. "This," Serathvel said softly, "is what we have been missing. This is what we have been starving for. Not fear, which fades as soon as we consume it. Not terror, which leaves us empty and hungry again within days. But love, connection, the willingness to stand in front of danger for someone else. Not because you have to, but because you choose to." She turned to look at Marcus, who was watching with wide eyes. "This human stood between me and death without hesitation. He has no powers. He has no weapons. He has only his heart, and he was willing to sacrifice everything to protect someone who came to destroy his world. Vecnanzol was still on his knees, trembling. "My queen, I do not understand. This emotion, it feels like feeding, but it does not fade. It grows stronger, yes." Serathvel smiled, and there was no cruelty in it, only warmth. "That is the difference between taking and receiving. Fear must be stolen, but love is given freely. And what is given freely nourishes in ways that what is taken never can." She turned back to her commanders, her voice carrying the authority of 10,000 years. "The harvest is cancelled. We will not feed on Earth. Instead, we will learn. We will study. We will discover what else we have been missing while we gorged ourselves on terror." "But my queen," Yeliska said weakly, "we are hungry. Our people are starving. Then we will find new ways to feed. Better ways." Serathvel helped Yeliska to her feet. "And it begins now. With a single human heart that refused to break, even when everything said it should." She looked at Marcus again, and something passed between them. Understanding. Gratitude. The beginning of something that neither of them had words for yet. "The galaxy is about to change," Serathvel said quietly. "And it is all because of you, Marcus Cole." Marcus shook his head. "I didn't do anything special. I just did what humans do." "I know," the Queen replied. "That is what makes it so remarkable. The Velithran Dominion did not transform overnight. Change never works that way. Not for individuals and certainly not for civilizations that have existed for 10,000 years. But once it started, it could not be stopped. The first step was the hardest. Queen Serathvel announced to her entire fleet that the harvest of Earth was cancelled. The response was immediate and chaotic. Some ships cheered through their communication systems, their crews having already felt the ripples of what had happened in the Queen's chambers. Others went silent, their crews too shocked or angry to respond. 3 vessels broke formation entirely, jumping to faster-than-light travel and fleeing to the outer territories, where they swore they would continue the old ways. Serathvel let them go. She understood their fear. For 10,000 years, the harvest had been everything. It was their religion, their purpose, their identity. Asking them to abandon it was like asking them to stop breathing. Some would never accept the change, but many would, given time and evidence. The evidence came quickly. Marcus suggested they start small. Instead of trying to understand every human emotion at once, the Velithran should focus on learning how to recognize and appreciate just 1 or 2. Joy seemed like a good place to begin. A research team was sent to a planet the Dominion had conquered 300 years ago. An agricultural world whose people had been left alive to farm but were harvested for fear every decade. The team's mission was simple: find joy and bring back proof that it could sustain. Velithran life. They found a village celebrating a wedding. The Velithran observers positioned themselves at the edge of the celebration, their sensors extended, expecting to feel the usual baseline of suppressed terror that all conquered populations carried. Instead, they felt something else entirely. Music filled the air. Played on instruments the villagers had made from local materials. People were dancing, spinning each other around, laughing with pure delight. The bride and groom looked at each other with such intense happiness that the Velithran researchers had to step back. Overwhelmed by the force of it, one young researcher, a female named Scythican, who had been born after the last major harvest, made a decision. She stepped into the celebration, her pale skin and strange eyes drawing immediate attention and fear from the villagers. "I mean no harm," she said, her translation device converting her words into the local language. "I only wish to understand your joy. May I watch?" The villagers were terrified. This was a Velithran, one of the monsters who came every 10 years to feed on their nightmares. But the bride, a young woman with flowers in her hair, did something remarkable. She walked forward, took Scythican's hand, pulled her into the dance. The sensation nearly knocked Scythican unconscious. Joy, freely shared, given without expectation of return. It flowed through her like liquid sunlight, filling places she had not even known were empty. By the time the dance ended, Scythican was weeping. And she had not fed in weeks, yet felt more satisfied than she had ever felt in her life. The research team's report spread through the Dominion like wildfire. Joy was not just sustainable. It was more nourishing than fear by a factor of 10. And unlike fear, which created resistance and eventually exhaustion in the harvested population, joy could be participated in. The Velithrin did not have to take it. They could join in its creation. More research teams were dispatched. They found grief on a memorial world where an ancient species gathered every year to remember their dead. The Velithrin observers were moved to tears by the depth of the emotion, and those who were brave enough to share their own losses with the mourners discovered something astonishing. Grief, when shared, became something almost like comfort. The loneliness of sorrow transformed into connection. They found hope in a refugee camp, where beings who had lost everything were building new lives from nothing. The researchers watched mothers teaching children, communities forming around shared meals, leaders emerging to organize and protect. The hope burning in those hearts was fierce and bright and utterly intoxicating. One researcher described it as drinking starlight. The discoveries kept coming: gratitude, wonder, peace, love in all its forms, romantic love, family love, the love between friends, the love of strangers who helped each other without knowing why. Each emotion opened new possibilities, new ways of feeding that did not require domination or fear. Back on Earth, Marcus watched the transformation with a mixture of pride and concern. He had been named the Queen's Advisor, a title that made him uncomfortable but which Sarathvel insisted upon. His job was to help the Velithron understand humanity, to translate between species that were fundamentally different yet somehow connected by the emotions they shared. It was exhausting work. The Velithrin had questions about everything. Why did humans cry when they were happy? Why did parents sacrifice for children who might not remember them? Why did soldiers die for countries they would never see again? Why did strangers stop to help other strangers who were broken down on the side of the road? Marcus answered as best he could. Sometimes he had no answers, only more questions. But the Velithrin did not seem to mind. They were hungry for understanding in a way. They had never been hungry for fear. Earth became the first protected world under the Reformed Dominion. Sarathvel issued the declaration herself, standing before cameras that broadcast her words to every screen on the planet. She apologized for the terror her fleet had caused. She explained what her people had been and what they were trying to become. She asked for patience and understanding as the Velithrin learned new ways of existing in the galaxy. The response from humanity was mixed. Some people celebrated, seeing the transformation as proof that even the worst enemies could become friends. Others remained suspicious, unable to believe that creatures who had planned genocide could change so completely. A few extremist groups called for attacks on the Velithrin ships, though none succeeded. Marcus understood all of these reactions. He had worked in hospice long enough to know that change was hard, that trust had to be earned, that forgiveness was a process rather than an event. He counseled patients on both sides, reminding the Velithrin that humans had every reason to be afraid, and reminding humans that the Velithrin were genuinely trying. 2 years passed. The Velithrin fleet remained in orbit around Earth, but the fear had mostly faded. Shuttle traffic between the ships and the surface became common. Cultural exchange programs began, with Velithron researchers visiting human communities and human scientists touring. Velithron vessels. Marcus found himself becoming a symbol, though he fought against it constantly. The Velithrin called him the Calm Heart, telling stories about the human who had stood before their queen without fear. Humans called him other things, some flattering and some not. He ignored all of it as best he could, focusing on the work that needed to be done. One evening, 5 years after first contact, Sarathvel found Marcus on an observation deck, looking down at the Earth below. He looked tired. His hair had gone gray at the temples, and there were new lines around his eyes. "You are aging," she observed, sitting beside him. "That's what humans do. It bothers me. In another few decades, you will be gone, and I will still be here. You have changed everything, and you will not live to see how it ends." Marcus smiled. "Nobody lives to see how it ends. That's the nature of stories. We play our part, and then we step off the stage and let others continue. That seems sad, maybe, but it also seems right." Looked at her. When I started working in hospice, I thought my job was to help people die well. But over time, I realized it was actually about helping them live well in the time they had left. That's what you're doing now, you know? Learning to live well instead of just surviving. Sarathvel was quiet for a long moment. "I've been alive for 10,000 years, she said finally. In all that time, I thought I was living. But now I realize I was only feeding. There is a difference, isn't there?" "There is. You taught me that. One human with a calm heart, you changed the entire galaxy." Marcus shook his head. "I just did what humans do. I sat with someone in their darkness and refused to leave. The rest was up to you." The Queen reached out and took his hand. Her skin was cold, but her heart, which he could almost imagine feeling, was warm.
Thank you.
"Marcus Cole," she said. "You're welcome, Sarathvel." And below them, the Earth turned slowly, bathed in starlight, protected now by the same fleet that had once come to destroy it. The transformation was not complete. It might never be complete, but it had begun, and that was enough. That was everything. The Galactic Council chamber was designed to intimidate. It hung in the void between star systems. A massive station where representatives from 47 spacefaring species gathered to decide the fate of worlds. The architecture was deliberately uncomfortable for everyone, a compromise that made no species feel at home. The lighting shifted constantly between spectrums. The temperature fluctuated. The gravity was set at a level that felt wrong to almost every body type, Queen. Sarathvel had visited this chamber many times over the millennia. She had come as a conqueror, as a threat, as a monster that other species whispered about in their nightmares. The Velithran Dominion had been feared by everyone, and fear had given them power in these halls. Today was different. Today she came as something new, something the galaxy had never seen before. And beside her walked Marcus Cole, 53 years old now, his hair fully gray, but his eyes still clear and calm. The chamber fell silent as they entered. 47 species watched through various forms of eyes, sensing organs, and technological interfaces. Sarathvel could feel their hearts, a symphony of confusion, fear, hope, and anger that played across her senses like music. The council speaker, a crystalline being from a species that communicated through vibrations in their mineral bodies, addressed them first. "Queen Sarathvel of the Velithran Dominion, you have been summoned to explain the transformation of your people. 11 star systems have reported changes in Velithran behavior. Harvests have been cancelled. Former victim populations have been contacted for what you call cultural exchange. The galaxy demands answers." Sarathvel inclined her head respectfully. "I am happy to provide them. First, we must address the human." Speaker's crystals vibrated with something that might have been discussed. "We have received intelligence that this creature, this Marcus Cole, is responsible for what some are calling the corruption of your species. Is this true?" Before Sarathvel could respond, a delegate from a species whose world had been harvested 2 centuries ago stood up. Its body was covered in scales that shifted color with its emotions, and right now they were bright red with anger. "The humans must be quarantined," it declared. "They are clearly dangerous. They possess some form of emotional manipulation that can corrupt even the most ancient powers. If one human can transform the Velithran Dominion, what could 1 billion of them do? They must be contained before they infect the rest of us." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Sarathvel felt the fear rising, the old familiar fear that her species had fed on for millennia. Part of her, the ancient predator that still lived deep inside, wanted to drink it in. Instead, she looked at Marcus. He was watching the proceedings with a small smile on his face, as if he found the whole thing slightly amusing. When he noticed her looking, he shrugged. "May I speak?" he asked, not waiting for permission. His voice was quiet, but something about it made the chamber fall silent. "I know you're all scared. I would be too in your position. The Velithran were the worst thing in the galaxy for 10,000 years, and now, suddenly, they're different. That's terrifying. Change always is." He stepped forward, moving to the center of the speaking platform. Every sense in the chamber focused on him, this small, fragile creature who had somehow altered the course of galactic history. But here's the thing. I'm not special. I'm really not. I'm just a nurse from a small planet who learned how to sit with people when they're afraid. That's it. That's my whole power. I didn't manipulate the queen. I didn't use some secret human weapon. I just listened to her and asked her questions and treated her like a person instead of a monster. He turned slowly, addressing the entire assembly. Every human can do what I did. We do it every day, for our sick and our dying and our enemies and our friends. We call it compassion, and it's the only thing we've ever had that's worth anything. We're not warriors. We're not conquerors. We're not even particularly smart compared to some of you. But we know how to love, even when it's dangerous. Especially when it's dangerous. The chamber was absolutely still. Not even the crystalline speaker vibrated. You're scared because you think we're going to change you. And maybe we will. But not through force or manipulation. We're going to meet every species in this galaxy, and we're going to try to understand you. We're going to sit with you in your darkness and hold your hand and tell you that you're not alone. And some of you will hate that. Some of you will fight it. But some of you, like the Velithrin, will discover that what you thought was weakness is actually the greatest strength in the universe. Marcus looked at Sarethfell. The queen didn't choose me because I was unique. She chose me because I was human. Because humans do this instinctively, without even thinking about it. We see suffering, and we want to help. We see loneliness, and we want to connect. It's not a power. It's just who we are. He turned back to the assembly. So you can quarantine us if you want. You can try to contain us. But it won't work, because what we carry isn't a disease. It's a gift. And gifts have a way of spreading, no matter how hard you try to stop them. The chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates shouted over each other, some demanding action against humans, others calling for more study, others simply trying to process what they had just heard. The crystalline speaker vibrated frantically, trying to restore order. Through it all, Sarethfell stood calm and still, watching the man who had changed her entire existence. She could feel the hearts of everyone in the chamber, and beneath the fear and confusion, she sensed something else: curiosity, hope, the first tiny seeds of the same. Transformation she had experienced, it would take time. Centuries, perhaps millennia. But the change had already begun, spreading outward from one calm heart to touch every corner of the galaxy. Marcus Cole would not live to see it complete. Neither would many of the beings in this chamber. But it would happen inevitably, unstoppably, because love was like that. It found a way. The council session ended without resolution. No decision was made about quarantining humanity, no official stance on the Velithrin transformation. The delegates returned to their homeworlds confused and uncertain, carrying with them memories of a small gray-haired human who had spoken about compassion as if it were the most powerful force in the universe. On the journey back to Earth, Sarethfell and Marcus sat together in her private quarters. The stars streamed past outside, and the ship hummed with the energy of faster-than-light travel. "That was quite a speech," Sarethfell said. "I meant every word." "I know. That is what made it powerful." She looked at him with those ancient eyes. "You will not live to see what you have started. Does that bother you?" Marcus considered the question seriously. "I used to think about legacy a lot," he admitted. "When I was younger, I wanted to be remembered. I wanted to do something that mattered. But working in hospice changed that. I saw so many people at the end of their lives, and you know what? The ones who had tried to build monuments to themselves were usually the most unhappy. The ones who had just loved the people around them, helped where they could, been kind when it was hard. They were the ones who died at peace." He smiled. "I don't need to see how it ends. I just need to know that I played my part well. And I think I have." Sarethfell reached out and took his hand. Her skin was still cold, but Marcus had grown used to it over the years. To him, it felt like comfort now. "You have changed me," she said quietly. "You have changed my entire species. In 10,000 years, no one has ever done that." "You changed yourself," Marcus corrected. "I just asked questions." "You did all the hard work." It's always deflecting praise. "That is very human of you. guilty as charged. They sat in comfortable silence as the ship carried them home. Outside, the galaxy spun on, vast and ancient and full of species who were just beginning to learn. What humans had always known, some things mattered more than survival. Kindness mattered. Connection mattered. Love, in all its stubborn and illogical forms, mattered most of all. Seraph had sensed every heart in the galaxy. She had felt fear and hatred and despair on 1,000 worlds. But in one human nurse, she had found something different. Something that had shown her what 10 millennia of conquest never could. She had chosen well, and as the stars streamed past and Earth grew closer, the ancient queen of the Velithran Dominion held the hand of a dying man who had taught an entire galaxy how to live. The story was not over. It would never be over. But this chapter, at least, was ending well, and that was enough. That was everything.